Hi, my name is Vanya, coming from Studio Incognito. Today's art demonstration is part of a series called Backyard Birds in Blooms. Today's focus is going to be on the bobolink. I'm going to pull this camera in and just go over my materials. It's a little noisy as I pull it in. Let's get a good look at that canvas there. Alrighty. So for today's art demonstration, we will be doing the bobolink. This here is the bobolink, the male. He has slightly of a yellowish cap on his head, sort of a bluish-black beak, almost like a raven. And he kind of has like a tuxedo look to him when you look from behind. He's rather an interesting fella, a beautiful singer, and travels quite a bit. So for today, to do this demonstration and supplies, I have some paper towels, microfiber cloth, less lint on my brushes and my canvas. I have some mini micro brushes, just a variety, and that's for small details in the end. I have some angle brushes, variety of sizes. I have some filberts, a variety of sizes, and I have some flats, also a variety of sizes. I may not use them all, but I like to have choices, don't we all? Alrighty. I also have some terpenoid, which is an all-natural terpenoid. It's non-toxic, smells like oranges, for my brushes, and I also have a thinner painting medium made by Winsor Newton, and I'm using Winsor Newton oil paints today. So let's kind of get started. So I've already drawn out an outline of the birds, and it's kind of just a field. It's kind of a field background, and the bobolinks are known to they're known to be in the fields quite a bit. The Latin name for a bobolink actually means rice eating, and that's because they like to go into the fields where the rice grows. All right, so let's get started. I'm not going to do the whole entire painting, but we'll work on the bobolink himself. And to get started in oils, you generally work from the darkest of colors to the lightest of colors. And on my palette today, let's get a good look there. So on the palette we have French ultramarine, Payne's gray. I have a burnt umber, a raw umber, a burnt sienna, and a raw sienna. Naples yellow, sap green, viridian green. Then up top on the warm tones, starting with the crimson alizarin, which is a cooler of the reds. And then we go into a cadmium red dark, cadmium reds lights, deep hues, and then cadmium orange and cadmium yellows from the warm hues, the medium, to a lemon yellow. Titanium white for opacity. There's also a mixing white, which is like a zinc white that you can use, but today I'm using titanium white. So I'm going to just start off by grabbing my fuzzy old 1/4-inch flat, you can see in comparison, and I'm going to start off with a Payne's gray. And I'm just going to start off by going right into his head here, like such, right around the beak area, and just getting some color in. Mix your own black if you wish, and you can mix it with like a burnt umber and a French ultramarine. I like to have a variety, so I'm going to just start off with this Payne's gray, and then I may just use some raw umber in between so that I have some color to pull from. I'm going to try avoiding going, only because the majority of this bird is black, I'm going to avoid going into the wings so that I can still distinguish where the belly meets the wings in the beginning stages. And it generally doesn't look like much in the very beginning. You know, and it shouldn't. Painting is mostly shapes and colors, and that's how you gotta kind of look at everything. That's the approach I take anyway. You know, sometimes we get caught up in the details and lose focus of personality and so forth. And I'm also going to avoid the eye area as well. All right. I don't want to paint into the eye area itself. Now I'm going to switch to a softer brush. This brush is a little fuzzy and old, which is great for applying paint initially. Because it's fuzzy, it kind of gets into all the grooves of the canvas. And you can avoid the grooves. I like grooves on a canvas. Some people don't like the grooves in a canvas, and you know, you can put a lot of gesso on it and smooth it all out. I know some people will put gesso and actually sand it down just so they can get a nice smooth surface. But you can achieve the same thing by working on wood panel or masonite that's been prepared as well. Now I'm going to switch to one that's not so fuzzy, so it's a little bit more chiseled. Still a flat, a little bit longer than the other one, and softer. And now I'm going to go into some of the raw umber, and that's a really dark brown, as you can see. And when painting, try not to get the paint into the bed here. I call this literally here the little bed, because you don't want to get the paint in there, because then it ruins your brushes and they really separate, and it's very difficult to clean them. So I try to work mostly on the edges. Now I'm going to take the flat brush, but instead of placing it flat against the canvas, I'm using it in this direction. So I'm going to be pulling some color and just little strokes of feathers in the direction in which the feathers are growing. So they're kind of coming in a downward motion. And I'm starting off with some nice browns in between there. You want to have some color to pull from. On his face, he has quite a bit of brown as well. So I'm going to put some brown, and maybe even a little bit warmer brown. So I'm going to put some burnt umber right up at the top here, right before it meets that little cap of his. There we go. And maybe a little bit warmer tones right in there. Okay. Back into my Payne's Gray, I'm going to mix with a little bit of French Ultramarine. And some of the raw umber. And this is just because I want to have a controlled black. And what I mean by that is I can, control whether it's going to be warmer or cooler. So it has French Ultramarine and some brown in there as well, if I choose to go in one direction or the other. Now I'm putting that black right in between his wings on his back. You know, try avoiding the white part. And then that kind of comes down here like such as well. Now I won't finish this video today. I won't finish the painting today. Pardon me. Well, because this background has quite a bit of detail that I want to add in the environment. And there's some black in the tail as well. And I'm still using that black that I've mixed up. There's a little bit more brown, so I'm going to add a little bit more of the raw umber. Just a darker brown. And right here is a white strip. And like I said before, I referred to it as like a tuxedo. On the back of his, if you can see the reference up here, on the back of his tail, he almost has like a tail, like a coat tail, and that's white. And then right below it is dark. There's black there. And I'm just using a little bit of brown right underneath where that white tail is. Then I'm going to go straight in with the Payne's Gray right below it, leaving some of my space there for white in between. Alrighty. And they do have rather a long tail. Quite pretty. And then I'm going to go back in the opposite direction with a nice clean brush and go in between and clean in between those tail feathers like that. And like that. An interesting fact about the bobolink. The bobolink, he likes to sing while he's flying to attract the females, even when it's not mating season. They say over the course of a lifetime of a bobolink that it most likely travels the world, the earth, 4 or 5 times in circumference. That's crazy. Crazy, crazy. And something about the zinc oxide that they have in their nose allows them to fly at night and know where they're going based upon the magnetic field that the earth has. And another cool, interesting fact. You can learn a lot through birds. All right. Doesn't look like much yet, but give it some time. Shapes and colors. All we're doing is focusing in on the shapes. Now I'm going to start on that little tail, that little, what I called a coat tail, tuxedo tail. So I'm using a little bit of Payne's Gray just along the base of it. And then I'm going to go into a warm brown. Right above it, I'm going to go in with some burnt umber. That's the warmer of the brown. Not as warm as a burnt sienna, but warmer than the raw umber. And I'm just putting some of that right in there, like so. Pulling it right up into the underneath part of the wing. Now that black that I mixed before, I'm going to add a little bit more blue and a little bit more Payne's Gray. And I'm controlling it by making it a little bit cooler in tone. And what I want to do here is just add a little bit of blue. So when I add my white to it, I'm going to have a nice slate color right underneath that white pop. And that's what I mean by controlling. You know, by mixing my own black, I have more control whether I want it to go warmer or cooler. Okay. Now on top of his head here, rather than it getting muddy by me just adding straight yellow here, I want to slowly transition into the cap on his head from the black into this yellow. Obviously this black has some blue in it, so if I just go transition, it's going to turn green, and I don't want that. So I'm going to use a little bit, I'm going to move to a smaller brush, maybe perhaps a small filbert. So in reference to my finger, and it's a filbert slightly rounded at the top. It's a little worn out, but it is a filbert. And I'm going to go into a little bit of the cadmium red light and just start adding a little bit of color right in there, like so, right along the edge. Just little bits here and there. And then a little bit of the burnt sienna. Just a little tiny bit right on the tip of the brush. And right along that edge, I'm just going to kind of like zigzag a little bit. Just for a little transitioning of color here. And maybe right along the neckline, I'll add a little bit of that burnt sienna. And perhaps a little bit down into the back, like so. You can't see much of the color yet because I haven't started lightening things up. But once I started adding some whites and Naples yellow, you'll definitely see some of those colors come about. Alrighty. Now I'm going to go into this cadmium yellow medium. This one's a little sticky today. If your paint seems a little bit dry, you know, because weather has a major effect on paint, you know, whether it's humid or very dry out. And today's a very dry day. So, you know, that's when painting medium comes in handy. You know, whether you're using a linseed oil, a safflower oil, they're all great for fluidness. So you can thin it out just a little bit. You know, paint thinner is okay to use in the beginning stages, but it's not very good to use as a thinner toward the end. It'll cause your painting to crack over time. Because you want it, when painting, you want to build thick over thin, so each layer is a little bit thicker. So you definitely wouldn't want to use thinner toward the end of your painting. I'm sitting here painting and I'm looking out the window and I can see lots and lots of birds out there today they're having a field day. And we have some nuthatches out there, titmouse, black-capped chickadees, cardinals. It's a whole mess of birds out there today. Past few days it's been raining, so I think they're just enjoying it. You see, I'm trying to avoid going into the black pot so it doesn't get muddy or turn green. I'm going to go into a little bit of the cadmium light yellow. I don't want too much, because it's going to cool it down, and I really want it to be warm. Because the top of the Bobolink is, it does appear to be yellow, but it's almost straw-like in color. You know, if you were looking at a field, a dried up field of wheat or cattails, you would see that golden color. That's sort of the color of their cap. Now I need to switch to a little bit of a harder brush here. And hopefully you can see this. It's so difficult to control the light on a sunny day. It's more controlling on a gray day. Whenever it's sunny, the light fluctuates so much depending upon whether there's clouds passing by or over the sun. When it's a gray day, it's just gray. Alright, so let's clean that brush up. And I try to stay organized. There are days where I'm just messy and there's just no controlling that. But for the most part, I try to stay organized. By keeping my brushes separate so I know where to find them. Alrighty. So I'm going to go into an angle brush, and it's about 1/4 inch wide, and built on an angle. When I'm using an angle brush, I try not to use the longer side on the canvas first, because that'll ruin the brush. So you want to use the shorter side against the canvas first. And these are great for pulling feathers and lines. So if I start going into, let me mix up a little bit of a gray. So I'm going to take a little bit of white, and I do have some palette knives, which are great. You know, this one's great for mixing because it has a short side, a point, and a large side for scraping off and mixing. Then I also have this one here, which this is good for application or mixing as well, rubbing it around. So I'm going to take just a little bit of white, and I'm going to mix it up with that black that I made before to achieve a nice slate gray. And once again, I can control this. If I want to warm it up, I can put some crimson alizarin in there or some dark red. But for now, it has the colors we previously mixed it with, which was the raw umber, the French ultramarine, and the Payne's gray. And now I've added titanium white to achieve a nice slate gray. And I can take that other knife and just wipe it off like so. I only needed a little bit. I'll just leave it right on the tip there like that. Put it back on my canvas and my palette. Excuse me. And let's grab our angle brush and just start pulling some of those feathers out. So right up in here in the chest area, there's a little bit right below the neckline, and this is how we start distinguishing some of. You don't want to go overboard when pulling out some light, you know? Less is more in this instance. maybe add a little bit more blue. I'm going to add a little bit more French ultramarine blue to it as it comes down right here below, right below the wing. As I said before, less is more in this instance. And you start seeing some of that, the direction of feathers, just slight indications. I'll rinse my angle brush off. And now I'm going to go in and I'm going to add a little bit more French ultramarine blue to some Payne's gray. And this is going to give me just a dark blue. And right before that little coattail, I call it, I'm going to start adding a little bit of blue in these lines here. So that way when I start adding some white, it's going to give me some color to pull from. And I'm still using the angle brush, which is great, like I said, for lines. So especially when you're doing tail feathers, it's great. Okay. And then right up into the wing. I was cheap, I didn't mix enough paint. So I'm going to take a larger amount of the Payne's gray with some French ultramarine. I'm going to give that a good mix in. And I'm using this palette knife. And all I'm doing is just like smudging it against the palette. I'm using the paper palettes. Alrighty. Now that I have a little bit more mixed up, I was being a little cheap. There we go. I get some more coverage on there. That's fantastic. This tail feather goes a little bit longer there. And then up into the shoulder part of the wing. I'm pulling from an upward motion down and pulling with the angle brush, like so. And I'm trying to avoid going into the belly area, just so I know that distinctive line still. Right. Now, I do have some black, and I'm going to use an ivory black right on the wing, the shoulder part of the wing, and then right below the head and right behind the cheekbone. Maybe just a hint of it right up in here. All right. Now, I'll rinse that off. And you can see it's starting to come to life. Now you can wash these microfiber cloths, you know. I wouldn't put them in your wash machine because it has paint and it's toxic. Paints are toxic. One of the reasons I wear gloves. You know, made from metals of the earth, cadmiums and zincs and titanium metals. But, you know, grab a bucket, you know, like a 5-gallon bucket or something and wash them outside. It's quite fine. if you have well water, definitely, you know, keep that away from your well. Alrighty. I'm going to smooth out just all these edges. So I'm using a filbert, 1/4" filbert, and I'm just softening out all these edges. Alright. Now I'm going to take some burnt umber, and I just want to start adding a little bit more up here, right where the back meets that tail. So I'm going to add a little bit of warmth right in there by using that burnt umber right in the middle of the two wings around his back, and go down into the center where that coat tail meets. I'm only using that reference, that's not a key term. I'm just using that as a reference. Right in here as well. And I'm going to take a little bit of burnt umber and mix it with crimson. Crimson alizarin. Alizarin crimson. I hear people refer to it both ways. And I'm going to add a little bit of warmth right down here, right before it gets into that tail feather there, and over here. Maybe the light's reflective there, so there's a little bit more warmth over here. And then, for instance, right up here as well. And you'll see it more when I start adding white toward the end. You'll see some of that warmth come through. And maybe brush a little bit right in there and here as well. Might be a little bit of warmth right on the shoulder. And I think that's all I'm going to do for now there. And then on this back, on the shoulder part of the wing in the background, not the one in the foreground, but the one in the background, there's a little bit of blue. So I'm going to take that Payne's Gray mixed with the French Ultramarine Blue and just add some right in here. And you can't really distinguish the colors until I start adding the white to it, and you'll see. Alrighty. Okay. There you go. It's starting to come to life. I hope you can see it. Now, right along this edge here, this is where, like I said before, you know, I didn't want to put any paint there because I wanted to make sure that I still distinguished where that shoulder part of the wing met with the belly and its side of the body. So I'm going to take a 1/4" flat. This one's a little bit rough, so it's a little bit fuzzy and old. You can see that. But it's great for blending and also for taking paint out. So just to redefine that line, I'm taking a little bit of thinner and I'm going back in and just slowly cutting my line as to where I want that wing to meet. Or to soften out areas at the same time. So soften that out, pull that edge out and soften that out. interesting thing is, you know, when you're painting black or white, it's very important to add lots of color to it. So that way you can have, you know, tints, tones, and shades. If it's all flat one color with just the black and the white, anyway. And I'm just softening out the edges. I don't want any lumpy, bumpy things there yet. And before I get lost on where I want to put his leg is coming right here. So I am going to mix up a little bit of, well, let's see. Let's go with a burnt sienna for now. Burnt sienna and maybe a little bit of Naples. And some brown in there as well. And I'm just going to make a leg of where I think it might be. Just for now. Just so that we don't lose, in fact, where his leg is. There we go. And you can see part of his foot. That's in the background as well. We don't have to put that in yet. That kind of comes up over there. I think initially, and you know what, it's funny as time goes by, I did this painting a while back. But since then, I've realized that, you know, maybe I might have made his leg a little bit too long, so I'm going to shorten it on this one. And I'm going in with some raw umber right below. And some Payne's Gray right behind it. There we go. And right inside there. That'll give you an indication as to where he's perched. You know, there's a branch right here like that. So you can see it right here. So he's perched right there. I can throw a little bit of brown there just so you can see the perch itself. So the perch just runs right in here like this. A little bit warmer, so I'm going to take a little bit of raw sienna. I love that color. Love the color of raw sienna. Reminds me of a warm, cozy cabin. I don't know why, but it does. And that's just a small little perch there. Just to kind of see where it is. Maybe a little bit of burnt umber there. There we go. As I said before, you know, I won't finish this painting during the video. But I like to share my journey here in discovering these birds. Techniques of how I paint. Be a sponge. You know, if you're an artist, you know, you should be a sponge and look at other artists' work and learn from it. Study it. And if you're not, and you just enjoy it, do that as well. And if you've never painted before and you're interested, go for it. You know, don't be intimidated. It's just shapes and colors. if we could just stay childlike, we wouldn't be intimidated by learning new things. As we get older, we develop fears. When we're small, our fears are of a different beast. Alrighty, so that's just a little indication of a stem or so. Let's get back to the bobolink. So up top here, we're going to need some warmth in here, so I am going to take a little bit of the crimson alizarin, and I'm just going to add just a little touch right in there, like so. And maybe perhaps down in here as well. There we go. I don't see much up in his face there. That's mostly blue up there in his face. Underneath his beak, there is some Payne's Gray, raw umber, and a little bit of crimson alizarin. Right up into his beak. So right on the base part of his beak. I'm going to make a line here like so. And if it's a little bit too thick, don't be afraid to go back in and wipe it out. So we're about 42 minutes in. So we've got about, a little over 15 minutes left. Come back in the other direction and just clean up that line just a little bit. And I'm going to take a little bit of this Payne's Gray and kind of just overlap the belly part right here. Right there. Maybe just a little bit down in here. That'll give me something to pull some highlight from. And I'm going to take some of that ivory black, put it right underneath here as well. Yeah. Beautiful. And I feel as though this might be a little bit too thick, so I'm going to thin this out just a little bit. So you can take a little bit of thinner and just go along the edge and push, Just push it back up into your subject matter. Just like that. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Alright. Same thing here. I call them like little burrs, on the edges of the paint. Soften those edges out. And I'm going to take a filbert, nice fuzzy filbert. This is a 1/2 inch filbert. Old and frayed, but it's dry. No water, no paint, no thinner. It's just dry, very dry. And I'm just going to start softening out all these edges here. So I'm just taking the brush and softening out the edges. Getting some nice soft edges and blending at the same time. There we go. Such a quiet day out there today. Lots of birds, but they're not singing, which is odd. They're eating quite a bit from my feeders, but they're not singing too much. Maybe there's more rain coming. You can learn so much from the birds. Alright, now I'm rinsing that off. these little containers for brush cleaner. They have this little tray. It comes right out and has little holes. So when you're brushing and you're cleaning out your brushes, you can brush it right against those little holes and all the debris and particles, dried particles of paint, go to the bottom. And it helps keep your brushes nice and straight too. It's non-toxic. This is a non-toxic terpenoid. It smells like oranges. Alrighty. So now I'm going to go in and I'm just going to soften out these edges here before I start adding some white. So up in this little shoulder part, kind of reminds me of little angel wings. Up in this shoulder part here, there's lots of white. But I want to soften out all these edges before I start adding the white. I don't want it to be muddy. And as you recall, I had put some crimson alizarin right in here. So when I start adding the white, you'll see those pinks come through. And that'll just give a little bit of warmth to the white. Still just softening out my edges. There we go. I'm going to take a little bit of the Naples yellow, mix it with some raw umber and some crimson alizarin. And I just want to add a little bit of warmth right down in here. You know, black on birds sometimes can appear to be iridescent. So you see different colors in there. You see blues, you see reds and yellows. Nice little sparkle to the black shiny feathers. So don't be afraid to add color in there, here and there. You know, using some crimson alizarin where the sun might be hitting it, and the colder parts, you know, using some blue. I'm going to take a little bit of Naples yellow and some burnt umber, and just below that wing, right along the edge, I'm just going to start throwing a little bit of the Naples yellow right in there, along with the raw umber or burnt umber, whichever you want. You can do both. The warmer side, put a little bit of the burnt umber, and the cooler side, the raw umber. And that's just along the edges there. Maybe right down in here, like right on that edge there. Now I haven't put in a beak, so I don't really have a small, I'll have to use a small little flat. And let's see, let's take some of that. I'll make a nice slate gray for the beak. Now, if you need to rest your arm, you know, artists have a stick which is called a maul, and you can rest that maul on the edges of your canvas or your easel, and that's just for balance. Don't have one with me today, so I'm just going to use my arm like so, and that's just so I can have some steadiness. And I'm going to go right up into the beak area and just pull right down in here. And they have a slightly curved beak, but I want to leave a little room for highlight there. There we go. Right down in here like so. And then there's a line in between, and I'm going to use a little bit of the burnt umber. Create a little line in between. And right on the bottom part, a little bit of burnt umber there as well. Wash my brush back out. And then I want to make a little bit of a brighter slate. So I'm going to add a little bit more French ultramarine on the bottom part. And this is just the bottom part of his beak. And I can lighten some of this up after the fact. There we go. Now I can take a little bit of white and add that. I'm starting to introduce some of the whites. So right along that top line of his beak, I'm just going to add a little bit of white right there. Just some highlight on his beak. And same thing at the bottom part. And I really should be using a very small brush for this. But I can go back afterward and... Too much coffee today. Too much coffee today. And then soften out those edges. There we go. Now I'm going to start building up some colors around his eye. So rather than going straight black, I'm going to go with the raw umber, and I'm going to put some raw umber right where his nasal cavity may be, up into the forehead, and then down around here, below the eye socket. Then I'm going to take the Payne's Gray, and right below that, just going to add some Payne's Gray. There we go. And I'm leaving the eye socket open, so I'll save details for last. I'm going to take a little bit of that black, and this is an ivory black, and right before the eye, I'm going to put just a hint right there, and right behind the eye, right in there. Leaving that eye socket open. We have about 7 minutes left here, so I'm going to try to start introducing some warmer colors. So right in the tail, I am going to add a little bit, just a hint, of Naples yellow right within here. There we go. Some Naples yellow right in there, and perhaps right here as well, and maybe right in there. I find that this is a little too wide, so I'm going to take some of this out. There we go. There's a little gap in between here. So I'm going to take that out right there. Yeah, just like so. And now I'm going to add a little bit of white. Taking some titanium white, getting a nice chiseled edge. And make sure it's nice and clean. So getting a nice chiseled edge. It's probably not a great edge. Let's do that again. My palette knife got in the way. That's a little better. So a nice chiseled edge. And I'm just going to start pulling some color in here. So let's go into the wing, the shoulder of the wing, pushing against that dark color, kind of coming up, pushing it in, and pulling. Pushing and pulling. All right. And then softening it out. Take a nice dry filbert again. Make sure that's really dry. And going along those edges and just softening them up. Wiping in between. Make sure that you wipe in between. Yeah. Pulling in the direction that the feathers are growing. Make sure you soften out all those edges. There we go. And then if you want to highlight again and go over highlights, you can do that as well. So I'm going to switch back to my 1/4 inch. Nice soft one. I want a nice soft one. There we go. Okay. And I'm going to go back in just a little bit, just for highlights, maybe right at the edge there and right at the edge here. Nice small filbert would do this good too, but I'm so partial to these flats. But if you're just starting out, you know, maybe the filberts be a little bit better for you. Alrighty. Now in the back, it has these little places where each wing meets. One in the background, one in the foreground. Alrighty. We have about 2 minutes left. And you can really kind of see how he's kind of come to life here. Soften out those edges. There we go. And down in here. There's a little bit of gray on this side as well. Maybe over in here. And then down into the tail feathers. We'll start adding some whites in here as well. Taking the filbert again and softening things out. Make sure it's dry. And just pulling in the direction in which you just painted those feathers. Keeping all those edges soft. Getting some good blending. go. And there's lots of details I can do, but remember, the details are always toward the end. So don't get caught up in them. You know, art is about the process. It's not always just about what you see. It's about what you feel. It's a combination of all those things collectively. Alrighty. Softening all of that out. Same thing up here. We hadn't softened that out yet. And, you know, I will come back. I'll come back and I'll add some highlights on his head and put his eyes in. Obviously do the background. Some variations of yellow in his cap. I'm going to add a little bit of white right now and some Naples yellow to the top of his cranium. There we go. So we've gone over by a couple of minutes, but I just want to see how I'm cleaning this up. So as I said before, this painting is part of a series called Backyard Birds and Blooms. And the Fall River Cultural Council, which is a division of the Massachusetts Cultural Council, has supported me doing these paintings and bringing awareness about birds and the environment, which today was the bobolink. And they will be, all the paintings that I've done over the past year, and some from previous years, will be on display at an exhibition at the Narrow Center for the Arts in Fall River, Massachusetts. It's located on 16 Anawan Street. It's free to the public. The building is handicap accessible. It has elevators. The gallery is up on the 3rd floor. And on the 2nd floor, we have a variety of artists. Some painters, some sculptors, illustrators, and writers. So be sure to stop in on the 2nd floor and, you know, say hello and see what's up in their studios as well. I'm just cleaning up some areas so that I can come back to it afterward. But for the most part, you can see the majority. Let's go back with a wide angle, and I'm just going to pull back in the opposite direction on the tail feathers, just to clean up those lines in between. There we go. Yeah. I'm going to pull it in closer just so you can kind of get an idea, and put a little bit of French ultramarine mixed with the Payne's gray right in the eye socket, right in here, just like so. That's where his eye is going to be, and maybe a little bit of a highlight there. Just right. Well, that's a little bit too much. Maybe there's a little bit of a highlight right there. And a little bit of warmth right on his beak. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to pull the camera in so you can see the bobolink. Maybe turn it just a hair, like so. And there he is. It's a beautiful singing bird, known also as the rice bird. And that's just because they like to go into the tall fields of, wheat and grass and so forth. So till the next time, hope you go out, be inspired, try new things, go for a walk, enjoy nature, study nature, learn. I'm not here to lecture you, but hopefully inspire you. You can also find these paintings on my Facebook page, which is Vanya No Versa Viveris, and the page is Studio Incognito. And the videos are also on YouTube, so you may find links to videos as well on my Facebook. Till then, peace.